Okay, we're on now.
Okay. Nora, I'm so glad that you set this interview up with me because well, as you know, I'm volunteering with the Urban Appalachian Community Coalition Story Gathering Project. And I've always, ever since I first met you, I just felt like you had so many stories to share. And I really appreciate your being willing to do this with us, do the interview. So I guess I've kind of introduced myself, and I'm asking that you introduce yourself and particularly talk about where you live now and where you were born.
My name is Nora Stanger, and I am the current Appalachian Outreach Coordinator for Sinclair Community College. I currently live in Loveland, Ohio, which is just east of Cincinnati. But I grew up in Lawrence County, Ohio, the most southern county of Ohio that's part of Appalachian Ohio counties. Grew up way back in the county, back in the little holler, ran through the creek to get to the house, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And did you grow up there like kind of until you were maybe an adult or?
Yes, I left home. I left home to go to Berea College at the age of 17. And then, of course, I went home for holidays and such. But then after I graduated Berea, I moved to Abilene, Texas to do my graduate work. And then married a city boy from Michigan. Mom was just glad I didn't marry a cowboy. But we decided to land in the Cincinnati area because he's from Michigan. And this is a good central area between the two families.
Right, right. Wow. So what you went to throughout through the grade school and into high school in Lawrence County.
Yes.
And in one of the rural areas. I mean, like in kind of like a, because I know you and a moped know each other, of course, we all know each other. And she was talking about the Ironton area, like that downtown.
Downtown of like 15,000 people. But to me, that was a huge city. You know, I grew up in the county about 18 miles away from any town. And when I was a little girl, Mama only went to town once a month. So it was a big thing to go to town. And the rest of my life was all out in the county in a very, very rural community.
And one of the things that I know some folks have talked about is like what they did for recreation or, you know, like just like different things that were important as you were growing up, whether it was kind of your parents, you know, the schools, like whatever. It would be interesting to hear kind of part of that formed you into the whole person.
Well, the school I went to, there was no kindergarten. It was 1st through 8th first. And we were with the very same students all those years. And I think our class was like around 20, 24 students a class. So we all knew each other very, very well and each other's families because we were together all the time. And back home, you're amazed at how many people are related to each other. Like my granny's people were related to her daddy's people, that kind of thing. So you really knew everybody. And in 9th grade, high school, we consolidated 3 county elementaries to be the high school. And my graduating class was actually 76 people. And we thought that was huge. We thought that was just amazing to have that many people in your class. But for recreation, I'm one of 8 children. So there was always somebody to play with. And we roamed the hills. We just had the best time. My mom started a 4-H club and we were the club. And she taught us all of the trees, what they were, all the plants. She taught us the constellations in the sky. I grew up playing in the woods, in the creeks, climbing those sandstone rocks. That was our recreation. And because there were so many of us, And we all had very vivid imaginations. we we just had a good old time. We really enjoyed being in the hills.
Ah, this is possibly neither here nor there, but my mom grew up in Brown County and I grew up in Claremont County. And you know, Claremont is the next county to Cincinnati. So you
Yes,
think nowadays it's like a bedroom community or whatever, there's, you know, whatever. But at
right,
that point, it was a little bit more rural, actually.
right.
And
Yeah.
my graduating class from high school had 19 people in it.
Oh, that is great.
I
That is
know, like,
great.
oh my goodness. Um, but yeah, she worked off and on throughout the time I was growing up. And she would talk about me and my sister being like little Indians because we'd go back in the woods and build, you know, little lean-tos or whatever it
That's
was, you know.
right. It was so much fun. In fact, when I had my
Yeah,
own children,
that freedom.
yes, when I
Yeah.
had my own children, I wanted that so badly for them. And we live in a subdivision, but we've got lots of trees and we have a larger lot. And they would play like that Little House on the
Yeah.
Prairie. They pretend they were building fires, and Paul was out getting a deer for dinner, and so that's the kind of fun
Yeah.
we had, and I treasure that great deal.
So how did you decide, you know, at the time, like after you graduated high school and then like you went to Berea, but then to go to Texas for graduate school, that seems like a distance.
It was not my dream whatsoever. I got my undergrad. My mom always encouraged college, always. And I got my degree at Berea in psychology. I wanted to help people. I wanted to work with people terribly. And at Berea, that was the thing I thought would fit me for what I was wanting to do. But I was so naive because my siblings and I were the first generation college. And I didn't know there was such a thing as graduate school. And I was a junior, second semester junior in college before I realized you really can't do a whole lot with just a bachelor's degree in psychology. And
Mm.
my dorm parents were kind of like mentors to me. They were wonderful people. And they really encouraged me and kind of actually sat down with, I remember we sat and prayed over 2 applications that they had helped me with. I wanted to go to Ohio State because I thought that would be so fancy to be able to say you went to Ohio State University. But in their wisdom, my dorm parents were like, sweetheart, Ohio State is so huge. You're used to Berea. You've done great at Berea. But in Columbus, you would be chewed up and spit out. So they thought it was best for me to go to a smaller school. And the school I went to is Abilene Christian University, and that's connected with my denomination of church. And they really encouraged me to look at that school. So like I said, I was mad. No, I was going to go to Ohio State. I was going to be so fancy. We prayed over the 2 applications. I did not get accepted at Ohio State, but I did at Abilene with a graduate assistantship, which would also help me financially because mom didn't have a penny. She didn't have a penny to add to my degree. So that's what made the decision. But it was culture shock. Lord have mercy, it was culture shock.
Now, why? Like, how did that? Yeah, I mean,
Well,
you know,
yeah. Well,
I don't have a good idea.
First of all, the night before I got on that Greyhound bus to ride to Abilene,
Yes.
I slept with my mom. My mom was a single parent. And it was, in fact, I never slept by myself till I went to Berea because I always had 2 or 3 siblings in the bed with me.
I understand that.
But the night before I left, I slept with mom. And in the middle of the night, she woke me up and she said, if you change your mind and you don't want to go, I will not be disappointed. But I felt in my heart that if I was You know, I could stay home and work at the Walmart, and there's no shame to that,
Right.
but I wanted more. And so I got on that Greyhound bus in Ashland, Kentucky. It was the express bus. I remember that. So it only took 36 hours to get to Abilene, which,
Wait.
oh my goodness, that bus ride in itself was so, that's a whole nother story. But once I got to Dallas, and then the driver from Dallas took me straight to Abilene, which is like 3 hours west. The bus driver started talking to me, and he was like, "You're gonna love Abilene. It's out in the country. It's so pretty. You are just gonna be so happy." And my heart was already homesick. So I was like, oh, I sure hope I can. But my image of country and their image of country, very, very different. He said, Abilene is even, ACU is even on the hill in Abilene. Oh, what my heart needed to hear. Well, I got there. It is flat, flat, flat. The landscape was full of prickly pear cactus and dust and tumbleweed. And he's telling me how pretty this is. And oh my goodness, I was in shock. But the thing that was hard, he said ACU was on a hill. That hill was like a slope that was maybe 3-4 feet up. So it was very hard. I would say one of the hardest things was, as environmentally, is the sky was huge. You know, I grew up with the sky being this tall, right?
Yes.
It was like this. And I felt so exposed. I was terrified to be outside. It was hard. And then, you know, different people have different ways. And ACU had a lot of students that had a lot of money. Berea, poor Appalachians, I fit right in. Berea had students women who went to class in beautiful dresses and with diamonds on their hands that were not engagement rings. And they drove fancy cars. And I was intimidated. It was very, very difficult to get adjusted to all of that. But by the time I left 4 years later, because I finished my degree in 2 years, but I got married and we lived there another 2 years. By the time I left, I cried leaving the sunsets and the sunrises. I mean, there's beauty no matter where you go. Mm-hmm. But then again, there's nothing like home.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. So was your husband in this school as well?
Yes, that's where we were in the same graduate program.
And so he was in psychology also?
Yes.
And so I know that this is, I mean, one of the things I'm supposed to like eventually ask you about is your parents and, you know, like where they came from and this, that, and the other thing. But right now, I'm curious because I know you have children, or at least
I have 2 children, 2 daughters.
And also I know that right now you're at Sinclair, and you know that there's kind of like a lot of road between Abilene and Sinclair and Dayton.
Yes.
And I'm just curious about, you know, like as that like those various transitions happen, kind of like how that came along.
Well, my husband's name is Casey, and he had very similar goals and dreams that I had, and that was to help hurting people, to be there for people who were struggling and try to bring them hope. And so when we moved to the Cincinnati area, we began working at it was like a foster children's home, but it was on a campus. So he was a counselor for the children on the campus, and I was a counselor for young women, especially younger women who were pregnant and it wasn't planned and they didn't know what to do. So my job was to sit through them through their pregnancy, and if they decided to keep their child, then I would follow through with trying to help them get set up with the help they needed. And if they
Right.
decided that they prefer to place a child for adoption, I walked through that process with them. And so at a very young age, I guess I was 26 at that time. And I'd never had a child, and I was sitting with little girls who were going through labor, and some of them had been shunned from their family. So I was the surrogate mommy for the time. And it was overwhelming for me. I loved it. I met some of the most precious people you could ever imagine. But after 3 years of that, I had to find another job. And from that, I started working with people with disabilities. But then at the age of 29, I had my first child. And I really wanted to spend as much time with my babies as I could. I loved my career, but I longed just to, nurture my baby. So for a while, I was home with both of them for a little bit. But once the first one was born, I was overwhelmed with memories of my heritage. I was overwhelmed with memories of my granny, who was like the most amazing woman in the world. And I wanted desperately that Hannah and Hope, my daughters, would know who they were from my side of the family. Right, so then I reached back to my Berea days, and I started telling them Jack tales, and we sang all the folk songs, and Jean Ritchie was one of my heroes. So I was singing all her songs, and I started going to senior citizens groups and little community groups to talk about the value of the Appalachian heritage. I did this all on my own, but then that's what I want to do for a job. And I'm like, I even wrote an email to my sisters and said, I just wish I could work with the Appalachian culture. And I just wish I could help all of our people know how rich we are, how valuable we are, but there's no such thing as a job like that. Well, many, many years later, then I worked in a private school as a guidance counselor for children for many years. I did some work as a psychological assistant to a clinical psychologist. I did different things like that, with my heart mostly being my home. And then I had done some presentations. I wrote a book. People at Sinclair saw it. They invited me to come and start doing presentations for them years ago. And then all that played together. Eventually this position became open, and I learned of it, and here I am. So in 2012, I put an email to my sister saying this doesn't exist. And then in 2017, I started working this job. And I'm in heaven. I am in heaven.
Well, yes. And it seems to me, among, just from my perspective, because I've kind of been on like a little bit of the fringe of the Sinclair Appalachian Outreach Program, but you're so good with everybody, and like with kind of like bringing both ideas and also activities, and now you're also working with the students as well, even more, a little bit. So that's good too.
It's wonderful. It really is. Sinclair is a really jewel in the Southwest Ohio area, because they do so much to help students who have the desire to go farther with their education, but maybe they have their first generation college, or they don't have a penny to their name. And it's not like Berea, where everything, for me, it ended up being free, but it is very, very affordable. And there are so many scholarships, and there are so many people willing to walk with a student. I've told people before that I am a professional hand holder, and I'll let go of your hand when you don't need me anymore.
That makes sense. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. But now back to your parents. Did they both come from that Lawrence County area? Did they both, their families settle there and
My
move?
mother's family settled, my mother now even lives on the very same spot that the cabin was where she was born. My
Wow.
granny and grandpa bought that property 100 years ago. So when I go home, I'm really going home, and I can't imagine that never being there. Um, my father had a very troubled youth. Um, he was very abused and he was not wanted. So he was passed from relative to relative to relative. And his mother lived in Cincinnati, but his uncle was a physician in Lawrence County, was the country doctor. And in his teenage years, when he was really wild, his uncle adopted him. And he spent time in a military school in Kentucky. And then he met my mother there in Waterloo, where his uncle was the doctor. And they met, and she foolishly got married at very 17. And but his dysfunction was way too much. And he was in the military. And when I was 6 weeks old, I was the fifth child. He moved the family to Germany. And then mom had 2 more children there. And then he was stationed in Columbus, Georgia. She had her last child there. And then it all became too much and she came home. So my mom raised us alone. And when she started out alone, the baby was 2 years old and the oldest was 15. And so I don't know a lot about my father. He never reconnected with us until I was an adult. I mean, many, many years later. And so it was just mom and us up in that holler in a broken down log cabin, with no running water and a coal stove in the living room for heat. But and there were hard times, and I'm not going to make it idealistic. I do tend to romanticize about memories, but it was hard. It was very, very hard. A lot of time with no food. We were the lowest on the totem pole in the community. My father had done a lot of things that were very shameful, and everyone in the community knew about it. And so, that it's hard growing up in a small community in Absolutely. That everybody knows your business. It's good growing up in a small community because I look back now and I see how we were very much protected from the outer world and in that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as you were talking, because they're, small towns can, it is the thing where everyone knows not only knows your name, but also, knows the good, the bad, the ugly.
That's right.
And then, the strength as well, kind of in a sense. So, your mom must have been an incredibly strong woman, though. She must be an incredibly strong woman. And your grandma, the way you talked about her, she was probably.
Oh, we need about 4 more hours, Maureen. My granny was a self-taught midwife in the hills. And she really did all the doctrine. She knew all the medicinal plants in the hills. And when people got sick on the creek, they'd call for Granny to come and sit with them. So wow. Yeah, I have a beautiful heritage and I'm so grateful for it.
Yes, yes. Yeah. The one of the things I was also thinking about, you might not think about some aspects of your own story when you're listening to other people's stories, but unfortunately I do. And one of the things that I was thinking about was my own mother, who grew, like I said, with like a little hollow in Brown County, and she could only go to the 8th grade because in order to go on to high school, you had to be able to go into the little town next over, and she had to help out on the farm they had, and so eventually she did move into the city and get a job at a shirt factory because she could sew. She was,
Yes, yes,
and eventually she went to night school. But just like your mom, like it sounds like, even though at a point in time she started having children and got married and what have you, she didn't go to college, but she really wanted her children to do
yes,
more than
yes.
she did.
Right. She wanted to make sure that we didn't have to depend on anybody else like she had in an abusive relationship. And my mom, back home, we very connected to the spirit world, sometimes both the negative and the positive. And mom dreams are omens sometimes, and she believed very strongly that we children were born for a good purpose. And it was something bigger than what she could imagine. And so she would always tell us, you have, whatever trouble you're going through, it's going to make you stronger. You're going to be better prepared. Everything's going to work out. And mom actually went back to college when she was 40 and got her degree in
Praise the
special
Lord.
Yes. What an example to us, right? Because
Absolutely.
2 years before I went to Berea, I was walking with mom to the branch of Ohio University where she took classes, and I was sitting outside her room waiting for her because she never wanted to go by herself.
Wow.
So she taught many years before she had to retire. So my mom's a superstar. There's nothing less can be said.
Yes. Excellent. Excellent. That's wonderful. Actually, at some point, I don't know whether she would be open to it, but it'd be interesting also to have an interview with her and just be
Yes.
able to, like, I guess, like, that's amazing. Like all of the things that she did in her life, even to the point of going to Germany. It's like,
Yeah.
first I'm verbally, and just kind of then the strength that
Yeah.
she had.
Yeah.
Coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, now, Nora, I also am like jumping onto a different topic in a
That's
sense,
okay.
but I feel like I know that you've done interviews yourself, like, and like given those to the Story Project. And I thought at one point, I can't remember whether we were talking or exchanging emails, but I thought you were saying that there were some other folks from the Sinclair area or whatever that you also wanted to interview.
Yes. So
And
far, I've interviewed 3 people, and they've all been faculty at Sinclair, and they're all from the Appalachian heritage and amazingly beautiful. They're all 3 women. Yeah.
Sinclair, and then I know that the Dayton area has, of course, a whole lot of people with Appalachian background, but Sinclair especially must just have a real kind of connection for the community.
I really sense that. I mean, the majority of people at Sinclair are not of the Appalachian heritage, and yet so many people of that area originated back home. In fact, you'd be tickled with how many people have told me, yeah, we were headed to Detroit, but the car broke down in Dayton, so that's where we settled. And yeah, if there's an atmosphere at Sinclair that really promotes looking for the best in people and trying to shine up that jewel so that the community is richer for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's really wonderful. The other, now, this is probably getting off this topic, but
That's all right.
but there was a woman I thought at Sinclair named Carol Ball.
Yes.
She's still involved at all.
She is
I know
retired.
she's not teaching there.
Yeah, she is retired and very active in her grandchildren's lives. So she's still on our notification list, but she's doing the granny thing now. So
and that's important too.
And that is extremely, we know that. Yeah.
Yes. And then also someone named, maybe, was it Tess?
Tess Little.
Yeah, Tess Little.
Tess Little
Yeah,
was an art faculty in the art department and extremely talented. And it's actually Tess and Carol who started the Appalachian Outreach Program at Sinclair, I believe in the 90s. So I'm standing on their shoulders. So yeah, good.
As is a strong and able person who can do it.
Thank
Absolutely. Fill those shoes. So that's very good. Now, see, I probably have forgotten some of the questions I'm supposed to ask.
That's
So
okay. We're having fun.
what else would you want to share?
I think the thing that I most want people to know is that it doesn't matter what kind of house you grew up in. It doesn't matter how eloquent the speakers in your family are. Every single person has great value. And I truly believe what Mom said, that everyone is created for a good purpose. And our job is just, no matter what the ugliness is around us, keep looking for that good purpose.
And to carry it out.
Yeah, carry it out. That's all it is. And it doesn't matter even if you're of the Appalachian heritage or you're of the Italian heritage or the Jewish heritage or whatever it is. There is so much value to a human life. And people have to learn to believe in themselves. And until you have heard that from someone else, it's really hard to believe that on your own. So they need to be surrounded by that cloud of witnesses that the Bible talks about. And that's what helps us get through.
Yes, for sure. The gift of grace, which isn't it is us, but it's also all around us. Yes.
Yes, exactly. We cannot do it by ourselves.
Yes. Oh dear. Oh.
That's all right.
Want to come back to one other thing. And that is I guess it's kind of both related to what we were just talking about, but also going forward. I was talking to a friend of mine who worked for years at UAC, the Urban Appalachian Council, the predecessor of UACC. And he was kind of saying that he felt like people don't count so much like Appalachianness anymore. Of course, like when you're into the third generation or, going into the fourth generation from the original place where people grew up, it was called Appalachia. How is that still in people's lives? And I guess any reflections that you would have about kind of both the term Appalachian, but also kind of the heritage and how that is continuing. I'd really appreciate hearing.
I am, that lately or maybe the last 20 years, genealogy has gotten even more popular with the different apps you can get online to look. And as I get older, I want to know more about what Granny went through as a young woman. And then I want to know more about her mother and what she went through as a woman and her mother. And I think for all of us, that Appalachian spirit is that spirit of our family. The clan is so important, of our love of the land, love of the place, being rooted to that generosity. Our people tend to be overwhelmingly generous. But you know what I've also noticed? People who are poor tend to be more generous than people who are rich. And when you start looking back on your lineage, whatever it is, look for what maybe their strength was, what maybe their dreams were, and how that really impacts your life today. So whatever background you come from, there are some amazing people in that background. And with the Appalachian heritage, so many of the students that I talk with, they know that their granny or their great granny came from Appalachia, but they're so far removed, they really don't know what that means. And
Yes.
so, and some, to be honest with you, some of them are ashamed of it. They don't want to be connected. And that's because the stereotypes of that gun-toting, backer chewing, barefoot, lazy, right? And they don't want that. And I have to go in and say, oh, sweetheart, do you? So that's the fun that I have. And the more we can find to be proud of in our heritage, Loretta Lynn said, that great philosopher, Loretta Lynn, she said, if you don't know where you've been, how are you going to know where you're going? I agree. I agree.
Yeah. Yes. Very good. Very good.
Well, our
Absolutely.
time is almost up, Maureen. Is there anything else you'd like to ask me before we have to close up?
Well, you've told me so much already. And in addition to that, I feel like as I think about and like reflect on what we've talked about, there'll just be more questions. Then eventually I'll have to come back and say, now, Nora, what about this?
We'll do that. We'll get us a cup of coffee. We'll sit in front of the computer and we'll just visit like we're in the kitchen table.
I think that's a wonderful plan. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care.
You too.